It is officially 6 o'clock my time, maybe a little later for you or earlier, depending on where you are in the world. And this is a science call where you are going to walk away, I can guarantee you, smarter than all your neighbors, most of your friends, and probably a lot of people you know when it comes to the topic of insulin resistance and the prevalence of metabolic health issues, really worldwide. We have a few unique locations that seem to be doing okay, but for the most part, many of us are struggling. And we're going to talk a lot about that tonight. And some of you, if not most of you, have been utilizing the Feel Great system. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as we also do some education about insulin resistance. And I'm not going to be doing that education as much as Dr. Mijin Brown, who I'm so excited to be doing this call with tonight. I'll introduce her in just a minute here. But we're gonna talk about how you can make some lifestyle shifts. And I just want to say a quick word to this time of year, because there are a lot of people out there who are going to make some changes to their lifestyle when January 1st hits. That's when they're going to jump in. That's when they're going to make all these changes. But why would you ever make lifestyle and health changes right around the holidays? That seems crazy, right? And I just want to speak to that a little bit because I actually think this is the best time you could really double down on your goals, because we all know that there will be some indulgences during this holiday season. And it does not need to be a holiday every single day, right? But there might be more than usual. And what we have learned and will learn tonight, and what this system can do for you, is buffer the impact of what you're probably going to do anyway. So now is the perfect time to make some lifestyle changes. And if you have been utilizing the system, maybe you've been on it for a short time, you haven't quite caught the excitement of it yet, maybe you have plateaued and you're feeling kind of stuck, we're going to talk about how you can maximize your results and level those up on this call tonight. So wherever you are on that spectrum, this is the right place to be. And if you or someone you love is struggling with your health, share this call with them, invite them to come to these calls. They can ask questions and get answers that can really transform their health, their life, and quite possibly save their life. So I like coming on here. You maybe know my brother Trent. He typically hosts these, and we have a commonality of our story, which I'm going to grab my picture really quick so I can just show you a little picture of my dad. This is my dad with my kids when they were younger. And my dad, he got diagnosed with colon cancer at age 58. And there were a lot of warning signs with his health that we saw leading up to that diagnosis, but we did not really think much about them because it seemed like everybody his age was dealing with high blood pressure or high cholesterol or, a little extra belly fat and always on and off a diet. And so what I know now, I wish I would have known then. And I'm hoping that what we're going to teach you tonight can lead to a different outcome for you or for your dad. And that's really the message of hope that I want to share, is that this is working, that what we're going to talk about tonight is working and is a chance. And so on that note, I want to bring on a guest. Now, Ralph has agreed to chat with me. And quite honestly, Ralph is somebody that I have never met before. Ralph is somebody who I've never even spoken with. Well, I guess I spoke with him for a couple minutes briefly, but I don't know anything about his story. Okay. And so I'm going to be learning right alongside you what has happened for Ralph. And I just so appreciate you being willing to come on here and chat with me.
Oh,
So it's okay. I'm going to hit you with a couple questions, Ralph, right off the
go,
bat.
go right ahead.
Okay. So I'm curious, what was going on for you with your health and your emotional state prior to finding this feel great system?
Well, prior to finding the system, I was 305 pounds. I'd tried many different systems. I was dealing with anxiety and depression because most of the systems didn't work. And to be honest, 90% of that was because I wasn't consistent, didn't stick with it, or I did. I tried an extreme program, it worked, and then it didn't work. I got hurt, gained the weight, lost the weight, gained the weight, lost the weight. That's all that ever happened, and nothing was ever consistent, especially me, until I found this system. And it made being consistent just like waking up. It was just second nature now.
So, oh, wow. First of all, I think a lot of people can relate to the fact that you've tried a lot of things.
Oh,
And and that there's a lot of, and I think this is very common, that people blame themselves when those things don't stick. And they go, what's wrong with me? Lack of willpower, lack of discipline. Everybody can do it but me. And
yeah.
yet, here you are today with a little bit of a different story. So now we can question if maybe just the method was wrong before. And now you found something that is a realistic lifestyle for you. So what made it easy though? I'm curious, like what about this has been, because well, did you say easier or more simple? What is it that made this doable?
Absolutely the simplest and most effective thing I have ever seen. When I added in the tea, which is one of the reasons why I was so skeptical, was just simply adding in the tea and adding in the fiber. How can that make the difference that I'm seeing in all these other people? And that's where this skepticism came into play. And I just didn't believe that it would work. But again, when you hear about a money back guarantee, you're like, okay, well, I got nothing to lose. Let's give it a try. And yeah, oh my God. Talk about a change.
Well, I appreciate you bringing up the skepticism because I have had that response from many people, and especially people who have tried a lot of things, and especially people who are possibly like on medications and they go, okay, I'm doing this, 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 and this, and you think this is gonna change what's going on?
Exactly.
So is that the main reason that you were willing to try it? Were you like 90-day money back guarantee? What do I have to lose? Or what persuaded you, I guess, to go all in and try this?
My end all be all was my former doctor. Uh, I spent 8 years as a type 2 diabetic, just constantly taking pills and upping my prescriptions. And it just literally 8 years of nothing. My A1C went all the way to a 9.1 at one, no, a 9.3 at one time. I just found the paperwork today. I was at a 9.3 and I was just beating myself to death trying to get it to come down, trying to make my weight come down. And it wasn't until this system that I realized that that weight wasn't coming down because my insulin resistance, which I had never been spoken to about before during this whole 8 years, my insulin resistance was what was holding me back. It wasn't that I wasn't consistent with that program or this program. It was that I just never dealt with the insulin resistance. When my former doctor started talking about doing the injections because I'm way above 9 and my foot neuropathy was so bad that it just literally hurt and ached. Anybody that's dealt with neuropathy knows what I'm talking about. She wanted to do injections in between my toes so that I could avoid the pain. I'm like, that's just avoiding the pain. What's going to get rid of the neuropathy? Well, we can't get rid of the neuropathy. It's just going to be there. It's like the diabetes. You're just going to have to deal with it and we'll up your meds. That's not an option. And yeah, that's when I started going down the rabbit hole and I want to find something that's holistic and there's got to be something natural. And then I started seeing Greg and Jeff's videos and everybody else's videos. And I laugh when other people talk about being skeptical. They said, oh, I looked at it for about 2 weeks and then I joined the system. I looked at this for about 2 years. I literally researched this. I mean, I watched the science stuff. I knew who Rav was before anybody on here. I knew all of those people. But I always questioned it. How could it work this effectively? You're just drinking chlorogenic acid, you're drinking a tea, and you're drinking that fiber, but you're combining it with intermittent fasting. And then I start watching like Dr. Midge's videos and I see the science behind it and keeping that glucose down and keeping the insulin down. I never did any of that with any of those other programs. All I ever did was beat myself to death and get hurt. And then I'd gain the weight again. And then I jumped back on their program and I got hurt again. And then I gained the weight again. And it's just yo, 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 yo. No, I'm done.
Well, it's all of that, eat less, move more, and just that grind. And for those that don't know, because some people aren't maybe familiar with the A1C number, but what Ralph's explaining is an A1C that lands you in that type 2 diabetes category.
Yep.
So he was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and you had neuropathy and excess weight and anxiety and depression, you said.
Yep.
And were there any other symptoms you were dealing with?
Well, yeah, real quick, I can run down the whole list. I started this program May 1st. Literally, I'm a brand new guy here. I just started this May 1st.
Okay.
50.2 pounds gone, magically disappeared.
Wow.
And that's just a side effect of the program. Well, not really side effect, I'd say after effect, because when I fixed the insulin resistance, that weight just fell off and it's staying off. My A1C, which at that time would have been a 7.9 at the doctor's office. We went back again after doing this, 5.4. My morning my morning fasting numbers now, which they used to be, and I'm managing them, right? I'm doing this for 8 years, and I check myself in the morning first thing. As soon as I get up, I run downstairs, I check everything, I'm good. I'm running about a 250. Now, my numbers are 80 to 90 every morning. That's every morning. My blood pressure was off the charts, retarded. I worked at a prison, and I actually dropped like the heart attack issue. I thought it was my heart, but it wasn't my heart. I actually just basically bottomed out, woke up in the emergency room, and that's how I found out that I was diabetic, and that was 8 years prior. But my blood pressure now, after this system, 5 months, 122/80, consistently, not just freakishly, that's consistently. My cholesterol is down and normalized. My irritable bowel syndrome's gone. That foot neuropathy pain that I had, I'm up every day now, literally in the morning because of that chlorogenic tea. I'm up every morning now because I have so much energy, and I walk 3, 4, 5, even 6 miles a day. September. September, I did a military challenge because I was a Marine at one time, as always. I did 90 miles in that month. I woke up every morning and went 3 miles just to prove that I could do it for military appreciation. 90 miles. I ended up doing 120 that month. And that's with neuropathy, So, and by the way, when I went back to my doctor and with my new doctor and checked everything out, he had me do my A1C twice because he didn't believe it. My new insulin resistance score is 1.5, which is healthy.
Yeah, this is absolutely incredible. And I hope everybody's listening, because this is somebody who was at a loss and had a lot of closed doors and medications laid out. And you were basically headed down a one-way street, according to everybody around you, right? And you just were going to head down it as slowly as possible. And you made a U-turn, my friend. I mean, you have completely made a U-turn. And it is clear in just like the energy with which you like express this, just the joy that this has brought into your life to feel better and have that hope.
One of the very best comments, and I knew that I was going to the right doctor now because I changed doctors. The very first time I met my new doctor, he said, our very first meeting, he said, my job is to get you off of all of these pills. And he goes, not to say anything bad about the prior person. He goes, but all of those pills were doing was getting you to your next appointment.
Hey,
that hurt.
That's a note to all of us for what kind of doctor you're looking for, right? So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being willing to open up about like your skepticism and be so vulnerable about what's happened for you. And Ralph, I think you're going to be with us a lot longer. Which is really an incredible thing. So thank you for sharing. Would you have any last words for somebody who's skeptical, struggling? Maybe they're on the protocol and haven't really seen anything happen yet for them.
Well, then just wait, because it will happen. I see people on the system, and all of us do. Some people literally I just had a guy who talks to me about the system the other day. He's on the system now, thanks to me. He jumped in. He's only been doing this for a week. He just messaged me and posted it on my Facebook about how thank you for introducing me to the system. I have no more brain fog and so much mental clarity. He goes, this stuff is absolutely amazing. And that's a pastor at a local church.
Wow.
I mean, it's just, if you're on the fence and you have any doubts, your health is at the other end of this conversation. It's up to you.
Wow. Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for sharing your story. And again, just really grateful to have you with us and feel like this, entered your life for a reason and it
Yeah.
was knocking at your door and you finally opened it. And I
Yeah.
love it.
It was knocking for 2 years before I paid attention.
Yeah. So, hey, if you're on the fence and you haven't gone all the way in, jump in.
Yes,
Ralph, so appreciate you talking with us today.
not a problem.
All right, I'm going to move on, although I would love to continue chatting with you. And I want to introduce our amazing doctor that is willing to spend time. She is not getting paid. She is here for free because she is so passionate about what we're doing and what we're teaching, and she wants to help people. And she is far more qualified than I am to teach on this. She is an endocrinologist and has a very wide understanding of hormones and health and all about diabetes and everything in between. She has a pretty incredible personal story. I'm going to let her share about that. But all of us should feel honored to be able to learn from Dr. Midge. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to spotlight you and have you take over here.
Thanks, Brittany. That was so nice. And thank you guys for having me on here. And Ralph, like your story, it just made me so happy. So thank you for making me happy and really ties into exactly what I was going to say. It's like we planned this. But I want to, before I go on and talk about insulin resistance, I want to talk about my story and really why this subject and this product is so important to me and why I really want to get this message out to as many people as I can. So back, I guess it's 28 years ago, I was doing my PEDS residency here at Sick Kids in Toronto. And I got the call from my father, who was across the country out west in Canada. And he had been ignoring his symptoms and was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. And when he got diagnosed, because he had ignored his symptoms, he was really sick and had to be hospitalized for his diabetes. And so I, back in Toronto, felt very hopeless and helpless. And one of the things I did was go into endocrinology so I could help my father, so I could understand what was going on with him. So that's kind of how I went into it. Luckily, I really liked the specialty. It was great. Fast forward 28 years, he has, despite, like, we live in Canada, so we have, universal health care, and we actually got him to come move with us back in Toronto so we could get him even better health care, get him the right specialists, etc. And despite that, he had so many of the complications of diabetes, like he's almost blind. He has a pacemaker. He's had heart issues. He's got some neuropathy. He's got some kidney failure. But the biggest thing that has been heartbreaking for me is his dementia, his Alzheimer's. And, I stood by and I watched this, right, as his daughter and a doctor. So when I started to get pre-diabetes in my late 40s, as I was going into perimenopause, I got really worried because I saw firsthand that medications, they were not going to save me. I saw it with my father. I saw it with the patients. We heard Ralph's story, right? And I realized I needed to do something in addition to the medications. And so that's when I started to really dive deep into figuring out other things. And some of the things we're going to talk about is that I found this doctor online. His name is Dr. Jason Fung. A lot of you will know him. But he talked about two things that initially in the medical world were, people were saying he was crazy. And that was to intermittent fast and to carb restrict, right? And I was like, you know what? That doesn't sound crazy to me. That sounds like a great idea. So I I just went into it and I started intermittent fasting and carb restricting. Intermittent fasting was pretty easy for me once you get the hang of it. It wasn't bad. But the carb restriction part for me, I felt like such a loser because I would fall in and out of the keto wagon, I call it, where I would be good for a while and then someone would give me, a piece of cake and I'd be like, you know what, that looks good, I'm going to do it. So basically, I was struggling despite the fact that I was an endocrinologist. I had all the medical knowledge and the personal motivation. I was struggling. And so 2 years ago, I came across this very smart young man that a lot of you will know. His name is Trent online, and he was talking about this system. And I actually got interested because he was talking about gut health. And I had some major gut health issues. I had so much constipation. I won't go into too much details, but it was a struggle for me. And initially, I looked at it for the constipation. And then I started looking into the science, like Ralph. And I was like, wait a minute, this may actually help me with the other stuff, which was the carb restriction, which was my nemesis. So I started the system. And when I started, my hemoglobin A1C was 6, so not so bad, but it was at the pre-diabetes level, and I needed to go on metformin. And this was with trying to carb restrict, trying to intermittent fast. I was still doing that. I had gained 20 pounds, which for me is a lot because I'm only 5 feet. I had brain fog, I had low energy, and I had a lot of anxiety. And I still have anxiety, but it's getting better. But essentially, when I started it, I was literally like, this is the easiest thing I've ever done. It made the energy, the brain fog go away right away. Like everything improved that regard. I started to notice because I was wearing a CGM that my blood sugars were stabilizing. And after a while, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go off the metformin, recheck my blood hemoglobin A1C, and it was 5.4 from 6 to 5.4 off metformin. So not as drastic as you, Ralph, but still for me, it was a big struggle. And I lost 20 pounds, which was incredible for somebody who's 5 feet and in menopause at that point. So I was like, this is incredible. I need to share this because if I am suffering and I am struggling to do what we all know we need to do, then there are so many other people out there that need this. So I started sharing it. Of course, I shared it with my husband that he was the first one, and he lost 30 pounds. He came off his blood pressure medication. And I'm just going to tell you my story with my dad, and then I'm going to talk about the science. So my dad, with his dementia, I mean, it's that we couldn't really get back, except that he was a lot brighter. He was more interactive. So very, very thankful for that. But because of his dementia, I didn't have a lot of high hopes for the product in terms of his diabetes, right? Because we're really asking people to intermittent fast, carb restrict, and he was not going to have any of it. But one thing we had was my mother, who gave him the products very consistently. And we were able to bring down his hemoglobin A1C from 8.3. He was on 3 different diabetes medications to 6.3. And that was with no intermittent fasting and no carb restriction. That was just product. I'm not suggesting to you guys not to intermittent fast and not to carb restrict, but that is the power of the product. Like it was literally, I was amazed. And his endocrinologist was shocked. I'm not going to even go into their reaction because it was a little sad. But that's my story, and that is why I'm so passionate about sharing the science behind why this works and why I want as many people to know about this as possible. So I'm going to share my screen. So that's my before and after. The only thing I miss is that green dress. I'm kidding. Okay, so I want to just give you guys 5 key points that I want you to take away from this call. If you get nothing else out of it, these are the 5 points I want you guys to take away. So the first thing is that all of these symptoms of insulin resistance can be going on for 10 to 15 years before you get diabetes, okay? So for those of you that are on this call saying, oh, I don't need this product because I don't have, pre-diabetes or diabetes, this is also for you. And that is what is missing in a lot of our treatment of all of these metabolic disorders, is that we have all these symptoms that are occurring because of insulin resistance, but because if you go to your doctor and your doctor does your blood glucose levels and it's normal, they'll say to you, no, you're fine. But I'm going to show you that you're actually not fine. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one, and Ralph talked about this very, very well, is that if you go to your doctor and you get all these different symptoms of insulin resistance, and they see that your blood glucose is okay, they may actually put you on a different medication for your symptoms. But we are also learning that those symptoms or those medications are only masking the symptom rather than addressing the actual root cause. And so it's not going to take away the reason why you have those symptoms. It's just going to make you, deal with it a bit better, okay? The third thing is that all of this is actually good news. It's not bad news in that a lot of these diseases that we're going to talk about, these chronic metabolic diseases, a lot of them are reversible, and a lot of them are reversible with insulin-lowering strategies, which Brittany's going to go into in much detail in a bit. The fourth thing I want you guys to know, and there is a caveat to this, is that a lot of these chronic metabolic diseases are reversible, but you don't want to actually wait too long because, for example, with diabetes, if you have diabetic retinopathy, you can go blind. That is not reversible. Or you can get chronic kidney failure and have end-stage kidney disease where you need dialysis. That is not reversible. Or if you have non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which is reversible, but if you let that progress to cirrhosis, then that is not reversible. Or something that's hard for me to talk about, which is dementia, that is not reversible. So do not wait to have those things happen. Do something about it now when you're dealing with something that you can reverse. Sorry, I choke up every time I talk about dementia. Let me just have a sip of water. And then the fifth thing I want you guys to kind of understand, and why, just to understand why a lot of your healthcare professionals are not aware of this issue, is because of the way they've been trained. First of all, in medical school, we have very little nutrition training, if at all, for that matter. And I used to wonder why. And I think it's by design, right? That's the conspiracy theorist in me. But I think it's really by design. Because if you look at our health, that is probably the most important thing for our health, is how we nourish ourselves. But to give a group of doctors, traditionally trained doctors, none of that doesn't make any sense. So that's the first thing. We are not taught about nutrition. The second thing about it is that what we are taught is how to diagnose symptoms and say, oh, you've got this disease or that disease. And then we're taught how to treat it with medications. So that's how we're taught. And then when we are in practice, we are given a set of guidelines that are basically, probably very heavily, I want to be very conservative, very heavily, what's the right term? I'm thinking, I want to be very conservative, very impacted by big pharma, the pharmaceutical industry. So they are giving us guidelines that is helping us sell their drugs. Okay, so those are the 5 key points that I want you guys to get from this, if nothing else. So we are dealing with a major health crisis right now. In fact, 9 out of the 10 leading causes of death are lifestyle, chronic diseases, right? And once again, that's good news. We can do something about it. I see stories like this that was released in the New York Post in 2022, that type 2 diabetes is on track to surge 700% in young Americans. This makes me so, so sad. Like when I was doing my training 26 years ago, 28 years ago, this did not happen. We didn't see type 2 diabetes in kids. And now it's going to surge 700%. We still have heart disease as the #1 killer, despite all the medications, despite all the statins out there. So the thing that I want you guys to know is that we cannot treat a lifestyle disease with the medication. We need to treat or change our lifestyle and our diet. So in 2022, they did a study and they showed that only 7% of American adults were metabolically healthy. They were looking at things such as waist circumference, blood pressure, HDL cholesterol, your triglycerides, and your glucose, to name a few. And they showed that only 7% were good with all of these. And at least 93% had at least one of these problems. And in the past, when we as a healthcare professional looked at these issues and we had 3 of these things wrong, we would say that you had metabolic syndrome. And it basically was a good predictor of whether you were going to end up with heart disease. But we actually have a way better name for it than just metabolic syndrome, and that is insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is what is driving all of these issues and is driving our poor metabolic health. So how did we get here? I think this is one of the biggest reasons we got here, was that they started to tell us that we needed to eat 6 to 11 servings of bread, rice, cereal, pasta a day. And we all believed them, right? Like we all took it for heart and we started to do exactly this. And I think some of us still think this is how we should be eating. So this is one of the ways we got here. The other thing is a bunch of food myths that they also started to tell us, which we started to listen to as well. And before I get into the food myths, I want to just kind of give you this graph. And this is the insulin response to different macronutrients. And by macronutrients, I mean carbohydrates, protein, and dietary fats, right? And basically, the name of the game in lowering insulin resistance and in improving all of these metabolic diseases is to keep your insulin down. So when you eat something that's purely fat, your insulin response is very minimal. When you eat something that's more just purely protein, you get a little bit of an insulin response. But when you have something with a lot of carbohydrates and not a lot of fiber, it is going to spike your insulin really high. So I want to put that in the back of your head as I talk about some of these food myths and whether they make any sense when you guys know this. So one is calorie is just a calorie. Another one is weight loss is just about calories in and calories out. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. You need to eat every 2 to 3 hours to keep your metabolism up. We know this is not true. In fact, when you go on an extended fast, your metabolism actually starts to go up rather than this. And then this one really gets my goat, because this has really impacted us a lot. And the reason I say that is because they basically started to vilify fat, and they told us that we all needed to go low fat. And so the big food companies started to really capitalize on this, and they took the fat out of everything in their ultra processed food. And when you take something out, you need to put something back in. And what they put back in was a lot of carbohydrates, but they also kept the fiber out because fiber is filling and they wanted to sell us their food, right? And now if you go back to this chart with the insulin response of different macronutrients, they actually took that one macronutrient that wasn't impacting our insulin and they put the macronutrient that was making our insulin shoot up the most. And then they told us this was heart healthy, and we all believed them, right? So all of these food myths just really impacted why in the last 30, 40 years, we're just getting sicker and sicker. And so this is a quote from Dr. Ben Bigman, who is somebody a lot of us know and respect and love. And he said that all of these food myths was the perfect recipe to create a perfect metabolic storm to ensure that insulin is elevated and every chronic disease will follow. So what are some of the symptoms of insulin resistance? Well, you don't need to look any further for some of you than just your skin or look down at your belly. But there are a lot of symptoms of insulin resistance, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but some of them are going to be like out of left field for some of you guys, because you're going to be like, okay, how? Some of you will be like, okay, yeah, the inability to lose weight, that makes sense. But how exactly is insulin resistance related to something like high blood pressure or a polycystic ovary syndrome? Like, how is my sex hormones impacted by your insulin? Or for men, erectile dysfunction or migraines, right? So there are so many symptoms of insulin resistance, and I'm going to explain to you guys why there are. But insulin resistance isn't about just a bunch of symptoms as well. It's also about all of the chronic metabolic diseases. So it's, very easy to understand how diabetes occurs because of insulin resistance, and it's really the quintessential disease. But insulin resistance is also responsible for, once again, all of those diseases on that top 10 list, right? Where things like heart disease. In fact, we've been told over and over again that we need to lower our cholesterol level. But when you really look at the risk factors for heart disease, it's actually the biggest risk factor is insulin resistance, or again, things like fatty liver disease or migraines or dementia, which is now being called type 3 diabetes or insulin resistance in the brain. So all of these things are related to insulin resistance. So now, why is that? Why is insulin resistance affecting so many different metabolic diseases? And the thing about insulin, and the thing that everybody knows about insulin, is that every time you eat, your blood sugar goes up, and insulin's job is to bring that blood sugar down. But what a lot of people don't know about insulin is that it also has so many other functions, right? So some of the functions include fat metabolism. So when insulin's high, it tells your body to store fat. When insulin is low, it tells your body to burn fat, or protein synthesis, right? Insulin's responsible for muscle growth. And that is why back in the day, muscle builders would start to take insulin. And I don't recommend that for anybody, but it makes your muscle cells grow. Or electrolyte balance. When insulin is high, it makes you retain salt and water. And when insulin's low, you will actually start to pee out the salt and water. And also, it's got a lot to do with sex hormone production. And that's why when something's wrong with insulin, you can have issues with erectile dysfunction in men or PCOS in women. So that is how something being wrong with insulin is causing so many different symptoms and diseases in our bodies. So I have this slide on because I want to make sure to also touch on the fact that you can also get insulin resistance through other things as well, not just your diet, but through stress, lack of sleep, and inflammation. So we are all living in a pretty toxic environment sometimes, where there's a lot of food that's inflammatory, or smoking, alcohol. So all of those things can also, or seed oils, all of those things can also contribute to insulin resistance. But by far the biggest contributor is our food. And so what happens is every time we eat, our blood glucose goes up. And when that happens, our insulin goes up. And remember those different macronutrients and the fact that we're mainly eating a lot of carbohydrates. So our blood glucose is going up higher and our insulin's going up higher. And over time, when this is happening over and over again, and we're eating 5 to 6 meals a day, what happens is that your insulin level is up all the time. And it's that So when your insulin is, what happens is that your body starts to become resistant to it. Just like if you went to a rock concert and you were standing right by the stereo, for example, you would basically, tune that out. That's what our body does. And then that makes our body make more insulin, which then you become more resistant to, and it becomes this vicious cycle, right? And then eventually it just isn't making enough, so that now your glucose finally starts to get elevated. But like I said, that process can take 10 to 15 years. In the meantime, because insulin is responsible for so many other things going on in our body, it can cause, all those other symptoms and all of those other diseases. Okay, so insulin is at the core of all of the metabolic diseases. I hope I explained that adequately enough for you guys. And I just want to go back to these 5 key points and once again reiterate that I want you, if you have diabetes, by all means, you gotta, start reversing it now. But even if your blood sugar's not elevated, that does not mean you do not need something to improve your insulin resistance, and the likelihood of you having it is very, very high. And I would really urge you guys not to wait. Do something while you can, and have a little bit of patience for the frontline healthcare professionals. They are just doing what they've been taught, and I hope that all of us can teach them, which I think some of us are. And the other thing that I feel very, very happy about is that we have a lot of doctors on this call. I think even a neurosurgeons on here, and a bunch of like amazing health coaches that are really spreading this message. So I'm just very, very thankful to be a part of this team. And thank you guys for listening. And that is my talk, and I will let Brittany.
Awesome. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much, Dr. Midge. Would you mind just stop share on your screen?
I will.
Perfect. Okay,
Okay.
awesome. And I will just come on in here. There we go. Well, that was incredible, and she did a phenomenal job. I nothing to add. I'm gonna actually just talk to you about what we can do about it, because it's crystal clear that there's a problem and that most of us have been impacted by this. One of the things that stood out to me huge in what she just said was the whole replacing, like in the 90s. How many of you remember the fat-free movement and how our carbohydrate consumption skyrocketed when we all cut fat out, right? Fat-free everything, but tons of carbs. Snackwell cookies, I mean, if you know, you know. But this was a bad time and it messed with all of our heads. And so, okay, I'm going to show you exactly what you can do. And really, I'm just going to take about 5 minutes here to show you how you can get the most out of this protocol and become insulin sensitive, become the opposite of insulin resistant. That's what I'm going to show you for the next couple minutes. I need some group participation, so I'm going to ask you some questions that I would love for you to chime in the chat. And we're going to utilize the chat to show some proof of what's been happening and what's been working for people. And then if it's okay, I'll bring you back on, Dr. Midge, to answer any questions for anybody that has questions. So I'm just going to share my screen briefly, right? You can see it? Great. So here's what we can do about it. Rather than eating frequently and having a bite of this and a handful of that, and some of us think, well, I did only have 2 meals, but we're not counting the sip of orange juice or the handful of almonds or the couple, Cheez-Its, or that we licked the peanut butter knife when we were making our kids sandwiches. All of those little things, unfortunately, trigger insulin. And so when you are doing the intermittent fasting with this protocol, you have to actually do it. And this is what brings insulin down. And these tools that we have make it easy to do what I'm asking you to do. And so for me, I wake up in the morning, I have a hot Unimate. Right now, I'm loving my apple spice. In the morning, first thing, I sip on it throughout the morning. I add more hot water. I work out, do my exercise in a fasted state with my Unimate kind of as my pre-workout. And then I'll usually have my second one I'll make it in a big iced Stanley or something, and I'll start sipping on that all the way up until lunch. And then I have my lunch, and I'll show you a slide in a minute here. I actually put a balance before my lunch as well. You don't have to do that. You can do it the way it comes in the 30-day supply. But I like a 2 and 2 method where I'm having 2 Unimate and 2 balance, okay? So I have a balance before both of my meals. And the way that we recommend that you take those is the balance, you're going to shake it up and gulp it down. You don't let it sit on your counter. You don't take a sip and then set it down and go do something. You just drink it, and then you eat your meal immediately, okay? And you can also move that second Unimate to the afternoon. If you find that you really only need one throughout the morning and you're really snacky in the afternoon, have that second Unimate in the afternoon, okay? But when you drink that balance right before you eat your meal, you can get a 34 to 37% drop in your blood sugar spike. Now, this may be like a foreign language to you, but trust me, it's an important thing. This is going to help with anti-aging. It's going to help with your mood and your headaches and your focus. And it is going to drastically change how much insulin your body secretes. We want less insulin in our body, not more, okay? And lowering your blood sugar spike by 34 to 37% lowers your insulin secretion, okay? So this is huge. This is really important. And this is actually a better reduction than we are getting from the leading medications, like metformin, for example. Metformin doesn't lower as well as this is lowering, okay? So this is an incredible tool. And for most people that are on medication, it starts, with 500 milligrams, and then it goes up to 1,000. And before you know it, you're on insulin and you're jabbing yourself with a pen. And this is something you just gulp down real quick. It's so simple. And it's the difference for many people between going blind or losing a foot or, some other complication from diabetes that they don't have to face. This is your U-turn, your U-turn, okay? And a lot of people ask me, well, what about the Unimate? I get that I need to add fiber back into my diet. Everybody needs more fiber. But do I really need the Unimate, or could I just use water if I intermittent fast? You can use water, but in this study that they did where they used the control as water during a fast versus Unimate, they found that when you sip on Unimate instead of just water alone, you lower your GLP-1 by 60 to 70%. So everybody's injecting GLP-1 right now, the synthetic form, because most of us aren't producing enough. But Unimate gets your body to produce it naturally. It increases your natural production. And when you have more of this hormone, it turns down the noise of food. It quiets those dopamine receptors that are telling you that you need stimulants all the time. And it really helps your liver get rid of oxidative stress in your body, shrinks those fat cells, and amplifies your muscles. So if you're going to fast anyway, you might as well supercharge it with some Unimate. When you first start, it is common to feel a little lightheaded, maybe have headaches or muscle cramps. You might feel weak. You might have frequent urination. You might have heartburn or stomach grumbling or gas or bloating. All of this will resolve. And for most of this, you just need to replenish with some electrolytes and some water, and maybe cut back on the fiber until your body adjusts and just gradually ease your way in, okay? But what can happen if you stick with it is what I want to focus on. So if you have been using this protocol for, enough time to see some differences, I don't want you to exaggerate, but will you pop in the chat and will you just tell us what has happened for you so far? We've heard a lot of success stories tonight, but I'm curious for everybody on this call, there's over 250 of you. What has happened for you so far? This is a list of some of the things that I see commonly happen for people. You can screenshot that, and maybe some of these things have happened for you, but I want to read what's happening for the people that are actually on this call, okay? So let me see. Crohn's patient and balance has greatly improved my IBD. That's huge. That's huge. And there's also a lot of other people with autoimmune stuff that have seen a great reduction in their inflammation. 4.5 months in by Michael, down 79 pounds. Wow. 25 pills per day, down to 4. 8 blood pressure pills to 1. A1C went from an 8.8 to a 5.7 in 90 days. Wow. This sounds like it's saving your life, my friend. That's awesome. Renee said since January, down 77 pounds, 55 inches off. Blood pressure meds, off blood pressure meds. Sorry, sleep better, vertigo and inflammation gone, better energy, depression, and I think you're saying some grief has been alleviated. Whitney said down 58 pounds, no more chronic inflammation, no more high cholesterol, sleep apnea improved. That's incredible. Hopefully going to the doctor to get some more results, but that's incredible in and of itself. Melissa says down 40 pounds off blood pressure meds, pain, anti-inflammatory meds, and anxiety meds. No more GERD, no more, way more energy and much better sleep. Jim Grasser reversed his type 2 diabetes using the Feel Great system. So has his mother-in-law, and he's been unmedicated for about 24 months. Do we realize how significant that is to be unmedicated and reverse your diabetes? That's groundbreaking. This should be headline news. A1C last week was a 4.8, used to be 12.2. Diane says 2 years on the system, no more pain meds, no more inflammation, no more acid reflux, lost 39 pounds. Husband off statins, mother-in-law off blood pressure meds. My mom is putting her diabetes in remission. All have lost weight. Jimmy's 16 months in, reverse fatty liver, type 2 diabetes, blood pressure's down, sleep apnea, depression, erectile dysfunction gone, 88 pounds down, off 8 medications, all without a thyroid. Wow. This is incredible. Kim says reverse prediabetes in 5 months, dropped 45 pounds, acid reflux and inflammation gone. 55 and energy reminds me of my 30s. It's crazy. Yes. Okay, you guys, there's 35 more messages. I don't want to skip the part where those who feel like, hey, this is great. I love all this awesome stuff happening in the chat, but I'm struggling. I want you to have a chance, if that's you that's struggling, to talk to Dr. Midge and myself, and let's see if we can help you and coach you and point you in the right direction so that you can get the results that you're hoping for. So I am going to just really quick change my screen to how to maximize your results, because this might answer a lot of the commonly asked questions and the common problems we see. I'm just going to read over this briefly, and then I'll bring Dr. Midge on. So you can add an extra box of balance to your order, and then you can have it before both meals if you find that you're still struggling with managing your blood sugars. You can, or feeling full longer. You can replace any snacks with Unimate. If you do have a rare occasion where you are having a snack, or maybe you're having ice cream with your kids on a special occasion, use a balance. Sometimes people think, oh, if I'm cheating, I'm just cheating. There's no cheating in this. This is a life, okay? So if you're going to have carbohydrates or sugars, you should balance them with fiber every time, okay? If you forget to take your balance before your meals, just take it anyway. Taking it is better than not taking it. I like thinking about my meals as like a 1 hour window. And so, ideally you have it right before your meal, but get it in that hour for sure. Use Unimate as a pre-workout and try fasted exercise. If you haven't tried, this is a game changer, okay? This is a place where you can burn through some ketones. If you've been feeling shaky or jittery since starting this and you think it's the Unimate, I bet it's the ketone production, and that you just need to start lifting some weights, and you'll burn through some of those ketones and you'll feel a lot more stable. Okay, eliminate juice and soda. This is huge. This is huge. And I know this is a big leap, but I'm telling you, this will really make an impact for you. You can limit your carbs. You can eat your food in order, starting with fiber, then move on to your protein and healthy fat, and save the carbs till the end of your meal. You can pay attention to your non-scale victories. Notice the blood tests that are changing. Notice your mental health improving, your energy, your sleep, your digestion, fasting longer, your skin looking better. Sometimes people are so focused on the scale that they miss some of these other amazing things that are happening for them. So, okay, I wanted to make sure I covered that. And now, Midge, I'm bringing you on, and let's check the chat and see how we can help these people. So have you seen any questions that you wanted to answer? And I'll start looking through the chat for questions too.
There was a question about somebody who had a quadruple bypass and needed to be on medications
Yes.
every 12 hours. I guess my answer to that is, if they could talk to their doctor and see if they could take it like, within 10 hours, just to at least have a little bit of a longer fasting window. The other thing is, I wonder if you could take some of that with a balance instead. And then the third thing I wanted to say is some of those medications I would love to think that we could get them off some of those medications with the system so they wouldn't need it in the end. That would be my answer to that question. I don't know if you have any other
No,
thoughts.
I love that. I think that's great. I also know that just because you have a 12-hour fast and a 12-hour eating window doesn't mean you have to be eating all 12 hours. So if all you can do is a 12-hour fast, then I would still just do 3 meals with no snacks in between. And I think that there's a very good chance that you'll see some great results, especially if you make your first meal of the day protein, healthy fat focused, and not a thinly disguised dessert, as Dr. Fung says. Most breakfasts are kind of desserts. So don't start your day like that. Okay, we do have a question that I'm going to ask you about people who are still feeling hungry. How can we coach them if they're still feeling hungry?
Something that I had issue with before the system was that when I was fasting, when I started to eat, I felt like I had done myself such a great job fasting that I kind of went a little bit overboard when I started eating. And it really just delayed that blood sugar roller coaster that a lot of us go on. And so this is going to help you stabilize your blood sugar levels. And that also will help you when you guys are eating certain foods to be mindful of the fact that, along with the system, if you can have something that is higher in protein and fats, it's going to keep your blood sugar stable so that afterwards you're not going to be hypoglycemic from that high insulin, which will then lead to hunger. So that's the one thing. What was the first part of the question?
Well, I just want to add to that too while you're looking for that. I've been coaching a few people recently and realizing that they think, well, I'm getting a lot of protein, and it's because they're drinking a protein shake or something like that. But they're missing the whole protein source and the natural fat and all the things that contain. And it is hard to feel super full for a long time with that type of protein. So just try getting protein from a natural source and try more fat. And oftentimes that really kind of kills the hunger. The other thing that I saw, and maybe you can speak to this, is the people that are struggling with maybe some constipation after starting the system. What do you recommend?
So one of the things about the system and the fiber, that it's a blend of soluble fibers. And so that is amazing for all of the things we talked about, but also really amazing for gut health. But if you're looking for something for constipation, this isn't going to necessarily help with that. It could, but the reason I say that is because it can actually cause constipation as well. And so what I would recommend is that you would have more fluids as well as electrolytes to deal with the constipation.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, and that's worked really well for me too. Okay, so here's two questions I'm going to hit you with, and maybe you can't speak to this. Remember that even though Midget is a doctor, she's not your doctor, and so she can't necessarily give you specific advice. She can give you general counsel, but it's important that you remember that you need to always be working with your doctor on this stuff. But Sandy asked, how can I eliminate my levothyroxine on this system?
Okay.
Do you
So
feel like you can answer that or not really?
yeah, I can in a sense, like in a general sense. So that is for your hypothyroidism. And so this is going to help you in a certain way with your hypothyroidism. So you may be able to actually come down on it, but you may not be able to totally eliminate it. So that would be, and the two really go hand in hand, like hypothyroidism or thyroid issues in general and insulin resistance. Like when your insulin resistance gets better, your thyroid function gets better. So then you can actually try to come off some of it, but you may still need to go on or keep on some of it.
Okay, we have a lot of questions here and we're out of time. So I'm going to do 2 more questions and then feel free to hit us up with some follow-up or whoever invited you on this call. If we don't get to your question, please reach out to whoever invited you and we will get you an answer. We want to help you. Okay, so the next question that I saw was, I have no thyroid. Will this help me lose weight? And I did see that Jimmy was tagged on this because he's someone who has no thyroid and has lost a lot of weight. Is there anything you'd like to add to that? And then I'll read the next question for you.
No, nothing. I think that's, yeah, it's
Okay.
possible. And
Okay.
if you have no thyroid, you're probably on thyroid medication, so you're going to get that. But then this is going to help you with your insulin resistance and all of the other issues that come with it. So this will help you for sure.
Okay. And so then there were some questions about the citrus of the Unimate hurting teeth. I haven't heard of it causing problems for teeth. They're worried about the acid because of receding gums. Have you ever heard of that being a problem?
I have not.
Okay, and then what about if somebody, this is actually a really good question, so I do want to end on this one. What about people who are already on one of the weight loss injections? Maybe they're on Manjaro or something like that. What do you recommend that they do?
I think this is a great opportunity for them. I mean, first of all, you can use them together. There's no concern with it lowering your blood sugar too much, the two together. But I think this is a great opportunity for you to have something that could help you get off of those medications, because I find that, we're learning more and more about all the side effects. And sometimes people can't afford to keep on it for very long. So this is a really good tool to help you get off of those, and continue to have good metabolic health, continue to have weight loss or maintain your weight loss. So
Okay.
yeah, that's a great
Yeah.
question.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you all for being here and for taking the time to invest in your health and health of your loved ones. It's an awesome cause, and we have some great information that I hope you are able to soak in and hope it helps change your life. And again, glad you're here. Come meet up with us next week and have a lovely evening.